The alleyway stinks of rust and standing water. Harper's cheek is pressed against the cold ground, and she can feel every crack in the asphalt through the thin fabric of her cleaner's jumpsuit. The enforcer above her is enormous. Kevlar vested, 300 pounds of lichen muscle that barely qualifies as human anymore. His boot is on her spine. The encrypted drive is still in her pocket. That's the only thing she's thinking about, not the blood running from her split lip, not the burning in her shoulder, not the cold rain plastering her dark hair to her face. The drive. If it dies here, they all die quietly, every Null the city's ever thrown away. The enforcer crouches down close enough that she can smell the gunpowder on his gloves, and he draws a silver tactical blade from his belt. It catches the pink neon from the street beyond, gorgeous and lethal. "Nothing personal," he says. He means it. That's almost worse. He brings the blade down in a clean, professional arc aimed at her neck. Crack. The blade explodes, destroyed. Not deflected, not knocked aside. Destroyed, like it struck a wall of frozen concrete made of nothing but blue burning air. Harper hasn't moved, but the cold has. It radiates outward from her skin in visible rippling waves, frosting the puddles around her hands, turning each breath she exhales into a crystalline plume. Then her feet leave the ground. She rises, no jump, no effort, just lifted by something invisible and furious that doesn't care about gravity. Behind her, bleeding through her physical form like ink dropped in water, an aura assembles itself. A wolf, spectral, immense, constructed from roaring blue fire that throws no heat and casts no shadows, only cold, ancient light. The enforcer takes a full step backward. It might be the bravest thing he's ever done. Harper, or whatever Harper has become, tilts her head and speaks. Two voices come out, perfectly synchronized, one living, one not. Did you really think the dead stay quiet? The echo of those two voices dies somewhere above the alleyway rooftops, and Harper crashes back into herself like a wave hitting concrete. Her feet touch the ground. The wolf dissolves. The blue fire retreats into her skin, the way heat retreats from metal in winter. Fast, total, leaving nothing behind but the cold. She stands in the rain, shaking. The enforcer is already running. She watches him go and does not give chase, because her legs are barely holding her upright, and she doesn't know, she genuinely does not know, what just came out of her. 48 hours earlier, Harper didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in invoices. She believed in the laminated schedule clipped to her cart, and the industrial-grade glass cleaner that turned chrome into a mirror, and the particular angle you had to hold the squeegee to avoid streaks on floor-to-ceiling penthouse windows that cost more per square foot than she earned in a year. That was the world, clean, quiet, invisible. The Twin Alpha's corporate tower occupied floors 40 through 72 of the Valthorn building, and the cleaning crew, the Nulls, always the Nulls, came in on Thursday nights after the last elevator badge out at 11 p.m. Harper had done this run 43 times. She knew the layout better than she knew her own apartment. She knew which motion sensors had a 2-second lag, which boardroom had a broken HVAC vent that leaked cold air across the east corridor, and which bathroom on the 58th floor smelled like the drain had never once been properly snaked. She knew everything about this building, except why it was so cold tonight. She noticed it first in the stairwell. The kind of cold that doesn't come from air conditioning. It comes from something else. Something with intention behind it, pressing against the back of your neck like a held breath. Harper turned up her collar and kept moving. On the 64th floor, the Twin Alpha's private residential penthouse spread out behind a frosted glass partition, off limits to cleaning staff without an Alpha-level access card. Which none of them had. Harper had her standard key card, which was not the same thing. Except tonight, when she swiped it, the partition unlocked. She stood there. The light on the panel blinked green, patient and waiting. Harper looked down the corridor behind her. Empty. She looked at the open partition. Every rational instinct she'd spent 26 years cultivating told her to swipe out, clock off, and take the service elevator to the lobby. She went through. The penthouse was immaculate in the way that only truly expensive spaces manage. Not cleaned, but controlled. Every surface reflected her back at herself. Chrome fixtures, black marble floors. The floor-to-ceiling glass walls gave the city below the appearance of a circuit board seen from altitude, 1,000 amber and white lights blinking in quiet, in different patterns. Harper set her cart by the door out of habit and crossed to the nearest panel of glass. The temperature inside the penthouse was dropping by the second. She could see her breath. She pressed the back of her wrist to the glass, feeling the cold radiating through it, and looked out at the city. And then she saw the reflection. The woman in the glass was standing directly behind Harper, close enough to touch. She wore what had once been a gown, high-fashion silk, ivory, the kind of thing that belonged on a gala floor. Except it was destroyed, torn at the hem, soaked through with something dark that had dried to black at the edges. Her skin was the blue-white of deep ice, and her eyes were hollow spaces where a cold, spectral light burned without warmth, without mercy, without anything that resembled peace. Harper did not scream. She spun around. The room was empty. She turned back to the glass. The woman was still there, perfectly still, watching. Harper's mouth was dry. "You can see me?" It wasn't a question. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, not through the air so much as through the temperature, vibrating in the cold itself. Harper pressed her back against the glass. "You can see me," the woman said again, and this time there was something in it that wasn't threat or accusation. It was the staggering, desperate relief of someone who has been screaming into silence for a very long time. "I can see you," Harper confirmed, because she was practical even when she was terrified. The ghost moved. She didn't walk. She simply closed the distance. Arriving at the other side of the glass panel with no visible transition, her ruined gown drifting around her in an air current that didn't exist. Up close, the detail was worse. The bruising along her throat, the way the silk of the gown had torn from the shoulder seam, not at a seam, not cleanly, torn. Harper's stomach dropped. "My name is Blair." The cold in the room tightened. "They murdered me in this building." Harper said nothing. She had learned years ago that the worst thing you could do in a dangerous situation was fill the silence with your own noise. Blair's hollow eyes held her with an intensity that was almost physical, the pressure of a gaze that had been waiting with nowhere to spend itself. "Not just me." Blair raised one translucent hand, and the glass between them fogged from the inside out. See frost spreading in branching fractal patterns until Harper could only see Blair's outline. Then the frost cleared. What Harper saw etched into the condensation, names, hundreds of them, scratched in the ice like testimony. The Nulls they take. Blair's voice dropped to something colder than the room. The ones with no pack, no house, no one to file a report. People like you. They don't disappear, Harper. Their soul energy gets harvested. It feeds the twins' empire. It powers every biometric lock, every territorial ward, every ounce of alpha authority they flex in this city. Harper stared at the names. She recognized two of them. A woman from her crew who'd been assigned to a special corporate cleaning contract 4 months ago and never come back. A Null kid from her building, 19 years old, quiet, delivered groceries on weekends, gone, officially relocated. The word tasted like rot. The drive, Blair said. What drive? The private server terminal. 3rd door past the wet bar. Biometric lock. But your master keycard has a ghost protocol built into it that the cleaning company doesn't know about. A workaround the original building engineer left in the system before the twins had him removed. Harper stared at her. How do you know that? Because I was the building engineer's sister, Blair said, and he left that back door for me. The terminal room was small and obsessively temperature-controlled, which meant it was actually warmer than the rest of the penthouse, a jarring shift that made Harper's skin prickle. 2 racks of black servers lined the walls. One stand-alone terminal glowed in the center. Harper swiped her card. The panel read the ghost protocol. It opened. Blair stood in the doorway. She couldn't fully enter, some architectural warding in the walls keeping her at the threshold, and directed Harper through the file structure with the focused, clipped precision of someone who had rehearsed this 1,000 times in the dark. There, the folder marked with a simple silver star tag. Harper opened it. The security footage loaded immediately. It was time-stamped 14 months ago. The ballroom of this building, same penthouse level, and Blair was there, in that ivory gown, whole and living and arguing with a man who wore the kind of suit that costs more than cars. Julian, the older twin, by 7 minutes. Harper knew their faces from the corporate headshots plastered on the lobby wall 40 floors below. So she watched Blair point at something, a laptop, a drive, and Julian's expression go from boardroom smooth to something stripped bare and predatory. Then Kael stepped in from the left of frame. Harper stopped breathing. She didn't watch the rest. She didn't need to. She pulled her gaze from the screen and stared at the wall for exactly 4 seconds. Then she found the gala blueprints. The Ascension Gala, 3 days out. Floor-by-floor schematics. A ritual layout she didn't fully understand. Geometric floor markings, grid coordinates mapped to the ballroom stage, and a harvesting manifest. 300 names, all Null, all invited under the pretense of a corporate charity event. Harper's hand was already moving. She pulled the encrypted drive from her jumpsuit pocket. She carried it to transfer cleaning checklists between floors, had the most boring object in the world, and jacked it into the terminal's port. She started the transfer, 40%, 60. Then, the sound was almost polite, a soft ascending chirp. 1 note. Then the lights in the room shifted from white to a deep, pulsing red. A calm, automated voice filled the penthouse. Unauthorized data extraction detected. Biometric lockdown initiated. Security response. Active. 92% on the transfer. Harper yanked the drive at 94 because she had no choice. The terminal was already shutting the port down, and a lock gate was dropping across the server room doorway with a sound like a vault ceiling. She cleared the threshold by half a second. Blair was already moving ahead of her down the corridor. Or, not moving, drifting. Fast, urgent. Pointing toward the service stairwell at the far end. "The east stairs," Blair said, her voice cutting through the alarm's ambient pulse. "They'll send the elevator to lock you in. The east stairs go down to the 49th floor service bay." "Then what?" "Then you run." Harper ran. She hit the stairwell door shoulder first, steel cold under her palms, and took the stairs at a reckless pace, 2 at a time, 3, gripping the rail on the turns. Blair kept pace without effort, passing through the walls at each landing, reappearing at the next flight, a cold, phosphorescent smear of light guiding her down. 15 floors. She was on the 51st when she heard them, boots above her, organized and fast, the particular cadence of people who train for building pursuits. "Harper," Blair's voice came from the wall to her left. "There are 4 on the stairwell above you and 2 more entering from the 49th floor access point below." Harper stopped on the landing. She was boxed in. She looked at the door to the 51st floor. Blair materialized in front of it, her ruined gown drifting, frost blooming across the door's metal surface where her hand pressed against it. The service corridor connects to the west fire exit, but Harper, her hollow eyes were steady. They know you have the drive. They will not let you reach the street intact. The boots above were 3 flights up and closing. Harper met the ghost's gaze. This woman had been murdered in this building, had spent 14 months anchored to the place of her death, collecting evidence she couldn't physically use. She waiting for a Null cleaner with a ghost protocol keycard and the particular kind of stubborn, cornered pragmatism that refuses to look away from security footage. "I'll reach the street," Harper said. She pushed through the door. She was wrong. The west fire exit dumped her into a service corridor that smelled of industrial solvent and recycled air, and directly into the path of 2 enforcers who had taken the freight elevator. They were already in position. Kevlar, suppressors. The particular stillness of people who have done this before and feel nothing about doing it again. Harper had exactly 1 second to register all of that before the first shot came. It didn't find her chest. It found her shoulder. The impact spun her sideways into the corridor wall, her left side crumpling, her cart clattering away, the encrypted drive pressing hard into her hip, through the jumpsuit pocket like a reminder of why this was happening at all. The pain arrived a half-beat late. When it did, it was the kind that whites out peripheral vision. She pushed off the wall anyway. Blair materialized at the far end of the corridor, already moving toward the exit sign, not waiting, not hovering, pointing with the focused urgency of someone who understood that sympathy was a luxury neither of them could afford right now. Harper ran. Or she tried to. What she actually did was stagger at speed, her left arm locked against her body, her teeth grinding against the sound she refused to make. The stairwell door behind her burst open. More of them. 4 from the sound of the boots. The wall beside her head exploded in dry plaster. She hit the exit door with her good shoulder and tumbled out into the wet dark of the service alley. The rain had not let up. It hit her upturned face as she stumbled, soaked through her jumpsuit in seconds, turned the blood from her shoulder wound into a thin, watered-down trail she was leaving on the asphalt behind her. She ran to the end of the alley. Dead end. A wall. 12 feet of concrete block topped with razor wire, slicked with rain, and offering absolutely nothing in the way of handholds. Harper put her back to it and faced the alley mouth. Blair was already there, at the entrance, hovering in the gap between the buildings, her ruined gown drifting in a wind that belonged to a different world entirely. Her hollow eyes tracked the service door Harper had come through. It hadn't opened yet. 30 seconds, maybe less. Blair. Harper's voice was level. She had learned to keep it that way when her body was doing things she couldn't control. It was the one piece of herself she'd always been able to hold on to. How many? 6 total. Blair turned to face her. The frost that followed her everywhere had already begun to creep along the ground between them, threading into the cracks in the asphalt, glazing the nearest puddle to clouded glass. The alley has no secondary exit. The street access point is monitored. 2 more on the corner. Harper pressed her good hand flat against the wound in her shoulder. The pressure bought her a few more seconds of functional thought. So this is where it ends. No. Blair crossed the alley. She moved with a deliberateness that was different from her earlier urgency. Slower, weighted. The way people move when they are about to say something that cannot be unsaid. She stopped 2 feet from Harper. Up close in the rain-dark alley with no neon to soften anything, Blair looked like what she was. A woman who had been destroyed in that building, and had stayed anyway. 14 months of anchored, furious, patient waiting, because she had nowhere else to go, and the people who put her there were still breathing. "I can't touch the physical world," Blair said. "I can't carry the drive out of this city. I can't access their servers, and I cannot stop the gala on my own. Everything I know, everything I've spent 14 months documenting, dies with you in this alley." Harper held her gaze. Unless... It wasn't a question. Blair tilted her head, the smallest motion, precise and careful. "Unless I come with you." The service door at the far end of the alley opened. Harper registered the sound and did not look away from the ghost in front of her. "What does that mean?" "It means I merge." Blair said it the way you say something you have rehearsed to the point of exhaustion. "My spectral form inside your physical body, our souls fuse. It is not possession, it is not a takeover, but it is irreversible until the pact is fulfilled. Irreversible until they are stopped." Boots on wet asphalt closing from the alley mouth. A tactical flashlight swept the far wall and began moving toward them. Harper's shoulder was soaking through her palm now. She could feel the warmth of it, which meant she was losing more than she could afford to lose out here in the cold. She thought about the drive in her pocket. She thought about the names etched in frost on the penthouse glass. The woman from her crew. The 19-year-old kid who delivered groceries. 300 nulls walking into a gala in 3 days with no idea what the floor markings meant. She looked at Blair. "Will it hurt?" Blair did not soften it. "Yes." "Will I still be me?" Something moved in those hollow, burning eyes, a flicker of something that might have once been called grief. "You will always be you. I will simply also be present." The flashlight beam hit the wall above Harper's head, 30 feet away. "Do it," Harper said. Blair moved, not toward her, into her. The temperature in the alley dropped so fast that Harper's exhaled breath turned to ice crystals before it dispersed. Blair's form stopped being a visual phenomenon and became a pressure, a force that pressed against Harper's sternum from the outside, and then, with a sensation like swallowing a lightning bolt, from the inside, every nerve Harper owned detonated at once. Her back hit the wall. Her knees buckled. She did not go down. Something held her, not hands, not anything physical. A force threaded through her spine like rebar, keeping her vertical by sheer, furious refusal to let her fall. Blair's refusal. The cold moved through her like a second circulatory system activating. It found the gunshot wound in her shoulder and the pain changed. It went from the hot, wet agony of torn tissue to something crystalline and clean, a pressure that sealed rather than tore, frost spreading through the wound from the inside out, knitting the edges together with a faint blue-white luminescence that Harper could see through the fabric of her jumpsuit. The enforcer's flashlight found her. He stopped. He was the one who'd made the first shot. She could tell by his build, the specific way he was holding the suppressor. He was not prepared for what he was looking at. Harper straightened against the wall. Her left arm, the one she'd been holding locked to her body for the last 4 minutes, moved freely. She looked at her own hand. A thin latticework of frost traced the veins on the back of it, faint and flickering, like circuitry drawn in ice. Her fingers felt calibrated. Every tendon, every small muscle, registered with a precision that had never been there before, like something that had been present in her body her whole life, but dormant had simply opened its eyes. Inside her chest, she felt Blair. Not as an intrusion, as a presence. Warm was the wrong word for it. It was the opposite of warm, but it was steady, settled. It felt like standing next to someone who is absolutely certain of what they're about to do. "The drive is still intact," Blair said. Her voice came from everywhere now, from inside Harper's rib cage, from the frost-threaded air, from the space between Harper's thoughts. "And there are 6 of them." Harper looked at the enforcer with the flashlight. He had not moved. His colleague appeared at his shoulder, also stopped, also reading the blue-lit frost on her skin, and finding no protocol in his training that covered it. 6, Harper confirmed. "Can you handle 6? The question came from inside her, and it was not anxious. It was the measured inquiry of someone assessing a situation, cataloging variables, a scientist running numbers, a woman who had spent 14 months in the dark, collecting evidence and waiting for an instrument capable of using it. Harper rolled her injured shoulder. The seal held. The frost did not crack. "Ask me in 5 minutes," she said. She stepped away from the wall. The nearest enforcer raised his suppressor. Harper looked at the weapon with a detachment that surprised her. A calm, removed assessment that was partly her own stubborn refusal to show fear, and partly something older and colder that was now sharing the space behind her eyes. The enforcer fired. The shot came in low and fast, aimed at her thigh, a stop-and-detain trajectory. Not a kill shot, because they needed the drive intact and probably assumed she was carrying it on her person. They were right. The bullet stopped, mid-air, 2 feet from her leg. It hung there in the rain, perfectly suspended, surrounded by a corona of blue-white frost that spread from a point Harper had not consciously extended her hand toward. And yet her hand was out, palm forward, fingers spread. Blair's instinct had moved through her body before her own nervous system had finished deciding. The bullet dropped to the asphalt. It clinked once on the wet ground and was still. So the alley went quiet in the way that has nothing to do with the absence of sound. It went quiet in the way of held breath, of recalibrated threat assessment, of two trained enforcers looking at each other and finding no shared language for what they had just watched. "Told you," Blair said from inside her chest. There was no satisfaction in the tone, no warmth. Just the cold, compressed certainty of a woman who has been waiting for this exact moment for 14 months and is not going to waste a single second of it on anything so frivolous as feeling pleased. Harper felt it transfer into her own posture, into the set of her jaw and the stillness of her hands. She had spent 26 years making herself small, keeping her head down, moving through rooms like a draft that nobody notices. Because she'd understood from a very young age that the world this city ran on had no interest in protecting a Null, and the safest Null was an invisible one. That understanding had kept her alive. It had also kept her cornered and cold and alone in a dead-end alley with 6 armed enforcers and a bullet hole in her shoulder. She was done with it. She was done with all of it. "The one on the left is going to rush," Blair said. "His weight is already shifting." Harper turned her gaze to the enforcer on the left. He was shifting. Barely. A centimeter of redistributed weight, a micro-adjustment in his grip. But Blair had been watching predators move through this building for over a year. She read it like a sentence. Harper braced. He came, and the alley filled with blue-white light. The enforcer who rushed her made it 4 steps. 4. Harper's palm connected with his chest. Not a punch, nothing so deliberate as a punch, just contact. And the frost detonated outward from the point of impact like a charge going off inside a water pipe. His Kevlar vest shattered. The ceramic trauma plates inside it fractured along crystalline fault lines, and the enforcer went down with a sound that had no business coming from a human body. A dense, percussive crack, like someone had dropped a statue. He was breathing. He would not be getting up. Harper stood over him and registered what her hand had just done with the detached clarity of a person in shock. Except she was not in shock. She was the opposite. Every sense was running at a frequency she had no prior reference for, sharp and cold and precisely calibrated. Like a world had been in soft focus her entire life, and someone had finally adjusted the lens. 2 moving left, Blair said. Harper moved right. She cleared the next shot by 18 inches. She knew it was 18 inches because she could feel the displaced air of the round passing, could track the pressure wave of it with a sensory acuity that had no name in any language she'd grown up speaking. The enforcer who'd fired was recalibrating. She was already past him. Her elbow found the hinge of his jaw. He went sideways into the wall and stayed there. 3 down, 3 left. The remaining pair at the alley mouth were smarter. They'd spread their spacing, removing any angle that let her take both at once, and the 6th had gone for higher ground, pulling himself up. The fire escape bolted to the building's left flank. Tactically sound. Against anything they had encountered before, tactically sound. Blair read the geometry of it in the same instant Harper did. "The one above," she said. "He's lining a kill shot." Harper looked up. The enforcer on the fire escape landing had his suppressor trained at the center of her mass, a clean downward angle, rain sheeting off his scope, his finger already past the guard. She did not run. She looked at him, and she reached. She had no framework for what she did next, no training, no practiced motion, no muscle memory to pull from. It was purely Blair moving through Harper's instincts like a current through wire. Her hand extended upward, fingers splayed. The air between Harper's palm and the fire escape landing compressed and then inverted. A zero-gravity pocket that detonated outward from her fingertips and hit the enforcer like a pressure wave, knocking him off the landing and sending him crashing onto the wet alley floor in a tangle of limbs and equipment. He groaned. He was alive. She needed to stop being surprised that she cared about that. The two remaining enforcers at the alley mouth looked at each other. They looked at her. Then one of them took a single, careful step backward. The other followed. They disappeared around the corner at speed. Not running because trained enforcers don't run, but moving with the precise, urgent efficiency of people who have just fundamentally revised their threat assessment. Harper lowered her hand. The frost on her skin was crawling higher now, past her wrists, threading up her forearms in branching filaments, mapping the pathways of her veins in cold blue light. She watched it with the focus of someone watching a wound. "Is this permanent?" she asked. Blair was quiet for a beat. "I don't know." It was the most honest thing she'd said yet. Harper picked up the encrypted drive from where it had fallen, still intact. She turned it over in her frost-threaded fingers. 300 names on that gala manifest. 3 days. She looked at the alley mouth where the enforcers had retreated. "They'll call it in," she said. "The twins will know exactly where I am within 4 minutes." 3, Blair corrected. "Julian keeps his tactical frequency on a 12-second relay." Harper started walking. She didn't know this version of the city, the version she moved through in the next 3 hours, because she had never moved through it before. Harper had always been a service entrance person, freight elevators, back corridors, the parts of the city that face inward and downward, where the chrome and glass of the upper floors gives way to bare concrete and exposed wiring and the kind of fluorescent lighting that nobody designed for human comfort. She knew those spaces intimately. She did not know the neon-lit underground. The twins' corporate empire ran on the surface, the penthouses and boardrooms and charity galas, but its circulatory system ran below, through a network of clubs and parking structures and private freight depots that the city's supernatural population used as a kind of parallel infrastructure. Blair knew every junction of it. "The first lieutenant is at the Kessler Club," Blair said. "Sub-basement. He manages the soul energy transfer logistics, intake manifests, storage protocols. He's been doing it for 3 years. Harper pulled her hood up against the rain. "Does he know what he's managing?" A pause. "He does." They found the Kessler Club through a service entrance off a parking structure ramp on the east side of the financial district. A steel door behind a row of commercial dumpsters, guarded by a single lichen in a tailored jacket, who clocked Harper from 20 feet out and moved to intercept. He was fast. She was faster. She sidestepped his grab, caught his outstretched arm at the elbow, and applied pressure in a direction elbows are not designed to accommodate. He went down. She stepped over him and used the door. The sub-basement of the Kessler Club was all exposed brick and recessed amber lighting and the kind of expensive industrial chic aesthetic that costs a considerable amount of money to make look accidental. It was also full of people, not civilians, corporate supernatural, the twins' middle management in tailored streetwear and earpieces, and the particular kind of relaxed alertness that reads as leisure, but is always operational. They registered Harper the moment she came down the stairs, a cleaner's jumpsuit, frost threading up both arms to the elbow. Eyes, Blair's eyes, or Harper's eyes through Blair's lens, or some hybrid of both, glowing with a cold light that had no business existing in a human face. The room went still. "I need Crane," Harper said. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Harper let the frost breathe, let it spread visibly across her knuckles, let the temperature in the immediate area drop by 5 degrees, let the nearest glass of ice water on the bar closest to her develop a second exterior layer of ice that crackled and expanded until the glass split down the seam. "Crane," she repeated. A door at the back of the room opened. The man who came out was mid-40s, compact, wearing a charcoal vest over a black turtleneck, with the careful grooming of someone who had built their entire professional identity around appearing unflappable. He looked at Harper. He looked at her arms. He looked at the split glass on the bar. Something shifted in his expression. Not fear, not yet, but the precursor to it, the moment when a risk-averse person realizes that their current situation has moved outside every scenario they prepared for. "The Null cleaner," he said, "from the 64th floor breach." "The one with your intake manifests," Harper confirmed, "and your storage protocols, and 14 months of documented evidence of what happens to the Nulls after they check into your system." Crane's jaw tightened. "That drive is encrypted." "It is." Harper held it up between two frost-threaded fingers. "I have a ghost with me who spent 14 months learning the encryption key. Character by character. We have time." Inside her chest, Blair was very still, the way predators go still, not passive, not dormant, coiled. Crane looked at the drive. He looked at the room around him, at the 15 or so corporate supernaturals who had shifted their weight incrementally toward the walls, away from the center of whatever this was becoming. "What do you want?" he asked. "The gala's AV access codes," Harper said. "The internal feed routing for the Valethorn ballroom, and the location of every off-site soul energy storage unit the twins are running in this city." Silence. Crane's eyes moved to her arms again. The frost had crept past her elbows now, threading upward toward her shoulders, each filament precise and deliberate as engraving. "And if I refuse?" Blair answered. She moved through Harper's vocal cords with a fluency that was getting less jarring and more terrifying each time. Two voices, one living and one decidedly not, speaking in perfect register. "Then every person in this room finds out exactly what the twins have been burning through to keep their empire running." She let that land. "Starting with you." Crane held for exactly 4 seconds. Then he walked back through the door and returned with a tablet. It took 90 minutes. 3 locations across the city, freight depots retrofitted into containment facilities, running on biometric locks and the particular kind of off-books utility draw that city infrastructure records would flag as industrial refrigeration. Crane gave her the AV routing codes for the Valethorn Ballroom. He gave her the gala's internal frequency. He gave her everything, because the alternative was sitting across a table from a Null cleaner with a ghost in her chest and Frost eating up her arms, who was looking at him with the patient, unwavering certainty of someone who has already decided how this ends and is merely giving him the opportunity to decide which side of it he's on. Harper took the data. She did not thank him. She walked back through the sub-basement, through the parted crowd, up the stairs, and out the service door into the rain. The next lieutenant was in a parking structure on the west side, then a freight depot on the harbor front, then a third location that Blair had been tracking for months, an off-books facility 3 floors below a corporate gym, running as a legitimate wellness center above, and something categorically different below. Harper carved through all of it, not with the alley's violence. That had been survival, cornered and reactive. This was different. This was 2 entities operating from a shared center of gravity. So Blair's knowledge of every nerve and corridor of the twins' empire, and Harper's 26 years of knowing exactly how invisible a Null can make herself when she decides to. She walked through locked doors. She stood in rooms where people twice her weight reconsidered their options. She left a trail of shattered glass and split ice and frost-threaded walls that the city would find in the morning and not know how to categorize. By the time she reached the base of the Valethorn building, the gala was 4 hours away. The ballroom was 40 floors above her, and every AV access code for the building's internal feed was loaded on the encrypted drive in her pocket, alongside the footage that was going to end the Twin Alpha's empire before midnight. Harper looked up at the glass tower. Rain hit her face. The frost on her arms had reached her collarbones. "Ready?" Blair asked. Inside her, around her, both. Harper exhaled. The breath crystallized in the cold air and drifted upward toward the tower's illuminated face. "Let's finish it," she said. The Valethorn building's top-floor ballroom was a study in controlled opulence, 40-foot ceilings, a glass roof panel that showed the rain-black sky above the city like a painting chosen for its drama, chandeliers that cost more than the annual salary of every Null in the building's cleaning registry combined. 300 guests in evening wear, supernatural corporate elite, pack representatives, territorial brokers, the particular stratum of the city's underworld that conducts its predation in the language of champagne flutes and quarterly projections. And at the center of the stage are Julian and Kael, identical in the way that precision instruments are identical. The same cut of black Armani, the same gold cufflinks, the same predatory ease in every line of their posture. Julian held the microphone. His voice carried the practiced warmth of a man who had learned early that charm was the most efficient container for cruelty. "Tonight," he said, "we ascend." The applause began. It did not finish. Because every smartphone in the ballroom lit up at once, not a notification, a broadcast. The footage loaded on every screen simultaneously. Harper had routed it through the building's internal AV frequency, pushed it to every device connected to the Valethorn's guest network, and the guests at the Ascension Gala were, to a person, the kind of people who kept their devices on and their network access open because they had never once considered that the infrastructure of this building could be turned against them. The room went very quiet. On every screen, the ballroom. 14 months ago, Blair in ivory silk, whole and living and fighting. Julian's expression going from smooth to stripped. Kael entering from the left. And then, what happened next? All of it. Unedited. Time-stamped. The roof came in. The glass panel above the stage did not crack from a single point, and spider outward, the way glass breaks when it fails. It exploded inward from every edge simultaneously, as though something had reached up from below and pulled it apart by the seams, and the rain that had been pressing against it for hours came through in a sheet. And Harper came through with it. She descended through the falling glass and the rain and the chandelier's amber light, wreathed in blue spectral fire that roared upward from her skin like a second atmosphere. The wolf aura assembling behind and above her as she fell, not the tentative, flickering projection from the alley, but the full weight of it, consolidated and deliberate, a construct of freezing phantom light that filled the upper third of the ballroom's airspace and looked down at the assembled supernatural elite with hollow, burning eyes. Harper landed on the stage. The impact was not loud. That was the part that would stay with people afterward. How quiet it was. No boom, no shockwave. Just the soft, definitive sound of boots on polished marble. And then the temperature in the ballroom dropped 15 degrees in 4 seconds. Champagne glasses frosted over in people's hands. The floral arrangements on the nearest tables crystallized at the petal edges. Every person in the room felt it move through them. A cold that didn't come from the broken ceiling or the rain now falling freely onto the marble floor. A cold with intention behind it. Julian had not moved from center stage. He was still holding the microphone. His gold eyes were on Harper. Whatever expression he'd worn a moment ago had been replaced by something that had no name in the vocabulary of a man who had never once, in his entire life, encountered a situation he could not buy or break his way out of. Kael moved first. He stepped forward from the wing of the stage with his silver tactical knife already drawn, the same blade, the same model, the same instinct that his enforcers had used in the alleyway, and he threw it, precise, professional, at Harper's throat. It detonated against the spectral aura 3 feet from her face and rained down in fragments that hit the stage like hail. Kael looked at his empty hand. "You recognize me," Harper said. 2 voices. The ballroom's acoustics carried both of them to every corner of the room without effort. "You should. Your cleaning crew runs on a 4-week rotation, Thursday nights, Sector 7. Julian's jaw tightened by a fraction. "A Null," he said. The word landed the way he intended it to, with the full weight of his contempt, shaped into a social weapon. "I deployed in front of 300 witnesses, the way a man uses a crowd as armor." Harper looked at him for a long moment. "The Null," Blair said through her, "whose name you never learned." The ghost's voice carried something in it that the room felt physically. A frequency below hearing, a cold that the chandelier's remaining crystals resonated with, producing a faint, eerie harmonic that everyone present would describe differently afterward, but none of them would ever fully forget. "Shift," Kael said to his brother. One word, a decision. They moved apart from each other with the fluid coordination of people who have been running tactical scenarios together since before either of them could read. Julian left, Kael right, creating a pincer geometry that had ended every serious threat to their combined authority for the last decade. See, the shift took 4 seconds. 2 men in Armani suits became 2 lichens that filled the stage from wing to wing. Not the crude, half-formed shifts of low-pack lichens, but the refined high-mass transformation of alphas at full territorial authority, their bodies restructured at the skeletal level, gold eyes burning, silver-threaded fur standing in the chandeliers remaining light. The assembled guests pressed back toward the ballroom walls. Julian lunged. He crossed the stage in 2 strides and hit Harper with the full, concentrated force of an alpha lichen in territorial mode. A blow designed not to kill, but to crater, to put her through the stage floor, to make the act of standing back up a physical impossibility. Harper sidestepped. His momentum carried him past her, and she caught his forearm as he went. 2 hands, frost-threaded fingers locking around the joint, and redirected him into the stage's rear monitor bank with a controlled, economical force that sent equipment cascading across the marble in a shriek of feedback and shattered casing. Kael came from the right, low and fast, going for her legs. She let him get close. She let him get close because Blair wanted him close, because Kael was the one who had walked in from the left of frame 14 months ago, and Blair needed him to know that she was in this room. She needed him to feel it. Harper dropped her hand to the crown of Kael's skull as he drove into her. The frost detonated from her palm. It didn't stop him. He was too large, too fast, too committed to the trajectory. But it found him. It threaded into his fur, into the lichen-restructured tissue beneath, into the spiritual architecture of his shift. And Kael faltered. He hit the stage on his side and skidded. His shift flickered. The lichen form stuttered at the edges, fur retreating and reasserting in a rapid, involuntary oscillation that produced a sound like static, like a signal losing its source. Julian had recovered from the monitor bank. He came back across the stage, and this time he did not lunge. He calculated, circling left, watching Harper track him, reading her for the tells that every fighter has, looking for the pattern. "You're going to burn out," he said. His voice came out rougher in the shifted form. The vocal architecture changed, the consonants heavier, but the certainty in it was unchanged. Whatever that is, whatever they did to you, it has a ceiling. Everything has a ceiling. Harper turned to face him fully. The wolf aura shifted with her, the spectral construct reorienting, its hollow eyes finding Julian's gold ones. "You're right," she said. Julian read it as concession. He moved. She let him close the distance. 4 feet, 3, 2, and Harper reached into his chest. Her hand did not pass through flesh. It pressed against the sternum, palm flat, and the frost drove inward through the Armani and the lichen-restructured tissue and the territorial spiritual core that an alpha carries the way other people carry a heartbeat. The source of the shift, the engine of the authority, the thing that makes a lichen an alpha instead of simply a large, dangerous person in an expensive suit. Julian stopped, completely. Every muscle locked. His gold eyes went wide, not with pain, not yet, but with the specific, unprecedented horror of a person who has encountered something for which they have no frame of reference. He had never been touched there. Nobody had ever been able to touch him there. "This is what you've been harvesting," Harper said. Her voice was her own, just hers. Blair was present. Blair was always present now, threaded through every cell. But this part Harper needed to say herself, in her own register, with her own 26 years of being invisible and disposable and endlessly replaceable behind it. Soul energy. You called it a resource. You called the people it came from expendable. You built... Her fingers pressed fractionally deeper, and Julian made a sound that was not a word. All of this, on the premise that some lives simply matter less. The frost found the core. She could feel it, the lichen spirit. The territorial authority, the thing that separated Julian from every person he had ever looked down at. She closed her fingers around it, gently, precisely, and she froze it inside him. Julian dropped to the stage on his hands and knees. The shift collapsed, not the controlled, voluntary retraction of an alpha choosing to return to human form, but a structural failure, the lichen form dismantling at every level simultaneously and leaving a man in a ruined suit on polished marble, gasping, his gold eyes fading to an ordinary brown that had probably not been seen in this room since before he understood what he was. Harper straightened. She turned to Kael. He was already watching her. His shift had fully retreated during Julian's confrontation. The involuntary flickering had stripped it from him incrementally, and he stood at the far edge of the stage in a damaged suit, his tactical knife gone, his brother on the floor between them. His expression was not the corporate armor she'd seen in the footage. That was gone. What was underneath it was something considerably older and considerably less composed. She crossed to him. He held. She gave him credit for that. She reached up. He was taller, even without the shift, by nearly a foot, and pressed her palm to his chest. "Blair," she said quietly. "He knows," Blair said, inside her, around her. She froze Kael's lichen spirit with the same cold, measured pressure she'd used on Julian. He went to his knees. Two alphas, on the stage of their own Ascension Gala. Before 300 witnesses. It began at the front of the room. One guest, a territorial broker in a charcoal suit with a pack insignia Harper couldn't read, dropped to one knee. Then the woman beside him. Then a row. Then the room. Not in unison, it rippled outward from the stage like a pressure wave, each person reading the person beside them and making the calculation that the supernatural elite has always made. Power is not inherited. It is not corporate. It is not the thing you were born into. It is the thing standing on the stage. It is the thing the room cannot look away from. Harper stood at the center of it. Rain came through the shattered ceiling and hit her upturned face. The wolf aura roared soundlessly above her. The frost on her arms had reached her collarbones, her throat, the sharp line of her jaw. Behind her, Julian and Kael's own security, the tactical team stationed at every ballroom exit, earpieces in, hands at their sides, looked at their employers on the stage floor, and stepped aside. They did not move to assist. They did not reach for their weapons. They simply moved aside because they were professionals, and professionals understand the geometry of a lost position. Two of them took the twins by the arms. Not roughly, just firmly, with the deliberate, quiet efficiency of people transferring custody. Harper watched them go. Julian looked back once from the ballroom door, those newly ordinary brown eyes finding her across the length of the room, across the kneeling crowd, across the shattered glass and the rain and the ruin of everything he had spent his life constructing. She held his gaze. She did not perform anything for him. She just looked, and that was worse. The door closed. The ballroom held its breath. 300 people on their knees in evening wear, smartphones glowing in their hands, the footage still running on every screen, the chandeliers casting amber light over frost-threaded marble, and the slow, steady fall of rain through a broken ceiling. Harper turned to face them. The wolf aura settled around her shoulders. Lower now, quieter, the roaring blue fire banked to something that breathed rather than burned. Blair was quiet inside her chest, not gone, at rest, for the first time in 14 months. At rest. Harper looked at the room, at the city's supernatural elite, kneeling in champagne and broken glass and the cold truth of what their silence had purchased. So she thought about the names on the wall. The woman from her crew, the 19-year-old kid, the 300 people who had walked into this building tonight expecting a charity gala and had instead found a room where the architecture of the city's power had just been taken apart at the seams and rebuilt around someone who had come through the service entrance. The crackling of frost on the marble was the only sound, and the ragged, distant breathing of two men being escorted out of their own empire. For the last time. Outro, the rain kept falling through the broken ceiling. Nobody moved to stop it. The chandeliers threw amber light across the kneeling crowd, and Harper stood at the center of all of it, rain-soaked and frost-threaded and absolutely, terrifyingly still. She looked at the room the way a person looks at something they did not plan to own, but will not be returning. Blair settled deeper into the quiet of her chest, not dormant, never fully dormant, but present the way a foundation is present, beneath everything. Holding. The Volthorn building had a new apex. She had come through the service entrance. She had come with a cleaning cart and a master key card, and a ghost who had been waiting 14 months for someone willing to look directly at the truth and carry it out into the light. The city below did not know yet. By morning, it would. Drop a comment. Did the twin alphas finally get what they deserved? Or should Harper have let the ghost drag them straight to hell? Are you Team Corporate Pack or Team Phantom Vessel? Like, subscribe, and pledge your loyalty to the new apex of this city. The penthouse has been cleared, and the next chapter is already bleeding through the glass. See you there.